What if the person who took your child was still out there, walking free for 29 years, living their life, shopping at the same stores, maybe even watching you search for answers? January 13th, 1996. A 9-year-old girl on a pink bicycle vanishes in broad daylight. Her killer has never been caught. February 1974. A graduate student tells her husband she's going to Maine. She's never seen again. Her professor knows more than he's saying. January 14th, 1950. A West Point cadet walks out to meet a mysterious visitor. He leaves everything behind: his money, his clothes, his entire future. 3 families frozen in time, waiting for someone to come home. 3 cases where the truth is right there, just out of reach. Here's what connects them. In each case, someone saw something, someone knows something, and after decades of silence, that someone might finally be ready to talk. Maybe that someone is you. Have you ever wondered what happens to evidence after decades pass? DNA degrades, witnesses die, memories fade into nothing. But here's what investigators won't tell you. Sometimes old evidence becomes more valuable. Technology catches up, consciences break down. Deathbed confessions surface. Today we're examining 3 cold cases that refuse to stay buried. Cases where modern science meets old secrets, where one phone call could crack everything wide open. If you're fascinated by true crime mysteries that actually matter, cases where justice is still possible, hit that subscribe button now. Because every week we dig into the investigations that need fresh eyes. Your eyes. Think about this. How many times have you driven past a creek, a field, an abandoned building without knowing its history, without knowing who was found there, or who's still missing? These aren't just old stories gathering dust in police files. These are active investigations with detectives still answering phones, still hoping someone walks through their door with that one piece they've been missing. Let's start with a case that changed how America protects its children. A tragedy that became a system. A little girl whose name you hear every time a child goes missing, though most people don't know her story. The Amber Hagerman case. Arlington, Texas, Saturday, January 13th, 1996, 3:10 in the afternoon. 9-year-old Amber Hagerman rode her pink bicycle into an abandoned Winn-Dixie parking lot. Her 5-year-old brother Ricky pedaled beside her. This wasn't unusual. Kids played there all the time. The lot sat empty, harmless, just a place to ride without traffic. At 3:15, Ricky headed home. Amber stayed behind, making circles in the empty lot. She'd gotten that bike for Christmas just 3 weeks earlier. She wanted a few more minutes. 3:18 p.m. Jimmy Kevill, 78 years old, heard screaming from his backyard. He turned to look. A man in a black pickup truck had stopped. He grabbed Amber off her bicycle while she kicked, fought, screamed for help. Kevill watched the man throw her into his truck. The whole attack took less than 30 seconds. By the time Kevill called 911, the truck was gone. The pink bicycle lay abandoned on the asphalt. 4 days later, a man walking his dog found Amber's body in a creek bed 5 miles away. She'd been kept alive for 2 days before her throat was cut. The medical examiner confirmed what everyone feared. This wasn't random. Her killer had planned this. Arlington police have never called this case cold. Not once in 29 years. 7,000 leads have poured in. Each one cataloged, investigated, filed. The suspect description remains frustratingly vague. White or Hispanic male, 20s or 30s in 1996, under 6 feet, medium build, dark hair. He drove a black single-cab pickup, likely an 80s or 90s model. No chrome, no stripes, nothing memorable except what he did. Here's what makes investigators certain he was local. That creek where Amber was found? You don't stumble onto it. It's hidden behind an apartment complex down a slope, invisible from the road. Whoever put her there knew exactly where to go. The DNA evidence tells a complicated story. Yes, they collected samples in 1996, but water exposure damaged much of it. The creek had washed away crucial forensic material. Still, they preserved what they could. 2020 brought hope. Arlington police announced they'd resubmit everything using investigative genetic genealogy, the same technique that caught the Golden State Killer. Build family trees, find relatives, close in on suspects. But water damage creates problems even modern science struggles to solve. The samples degrade. Profiles come back partial, incomplete. Detective Grant Gilden leads the investigation now. He believes someone saw more than Jimmy Kevill that day. Maybe someone afraid to come forward. Maybe someone who thought they'd be deported if they talked to police. We just need one person to decide it's time, Gilden says. Within days of Amber's murder, a Dallas mother named Diane Simone called a radio station with an idea. What if kidnapping alerts worked like tornado warnings? Instant, everywhere, impossible to ignore. The Amber Alert system launched that same year. America's Missing Broadcast Emergency Response. It puts descriptions on every highway sign, breaks into every broadcast, sends alerts to every phone. Since 1996, Amber Alerts have directly saved over 1,100 children. They've changed how law enforcement responds to abductions. Those first hours matter most. 93% of murdered kidnapping victims die within 24 hours. The alert system turns entire cities into search parties within minutes. Donna Williams, Amber's mother, speaks at law enforcement conferences now. She helps train officers on rapid response protocols. Every saved child carries her daughter's name forward. I can't bring Amber back, Williams told reporters in 2021, but her legacy lives every time an alert brings someone home. Think about that. A 9-year-old girl, murdered in 1996, has saved more children than most of us will ever meet. Her killer remains free, but her name has become a shield protecting thousands. Yet for her family, every alert is a reminder of the one that came too late. In January 2024, Arlington police increased the reward to $10,000. They released new photos of the creek. They're betting someone's conscience has aged badly over 3 decades. Here's a question for you. What would you do if you saw something suspicious but were afraid to report it? Your immigration status, your past, your fears, would they stop you from speaking up? Because that's what investigators think happened here. Someone knows, someone saw, someone's been carrying this for 29 years. Unlike Amber's case, our next disappearance took 36 years before anyone even reported it. Here's what happens when families assume someone left voluntarily. The VICKE Lamberton Mystery, Worcester, Massachusetts. February 1974. 24-year-old VICKE Lamberton was rewriting her entire life. She'd left her husband, Lowell, moved out of their home, started graduate studies in psychology at Assumption College, and gotten unusually close to her professor, Dr. Roger Barker. How close? Barker helped her move out, stored her belongings in his garage, took her to New York City to apply for doctoral programs. This wasn't normal professor-student territory. Early February, Vicky called Lowell, said she wanted to reconcile, mentioned she was heading to Maine for the weekend with a girlfriend. But when Lowell started asking questions, things didn't add up. The girlfriend? She denied any Maine trip. Dr. Barker? He'd suddenly extended a ski trip to Vail, Colorado. His wife had returned alone. Barker stayed, claiming pneumonia kept him hospitalized. 6 years later, in 1980, one of Vicky's friends finally came forward. Vicky had told her about Colorado, about Barker, about starting over together. The friend had kept quiet, thinking Vicky wanted to disappear. When investigators confronted Barker, his response never changed. She probably met someone else, started a new life. I don't know where she went. 50 years later, that's still his story. Here's the devastating part. Vicky's family didn't report her missing until 2010. 36 years of silence. Why? They believe she'd left voluntarily. Vicky had talked about starting fresh, escaping her small-town Kansas roots. Her mother thought she was embarrassed about the divorce, maybe building a new life somewhere without the judgment. We just kept expecting a call, her sister explained to Detective Dan Sullivan in 2010. A letter. Something saying she was okay but didn't want contact. By the time Sullivan opened the case, the damage was catastrophic. Witnesses had died. Records were destroyed. Barker had decades to perfect his story. The female friend who'd finally spoken up in 1980? Gone. The ski resort records from Colorado? Long discarded. This is what delayed reporting does. It doesn't just make investigation harder. It makes it nearly impossible. The first 48 hours after someone vanishes are critical. After that, trail goes cold. After 36 years, you're not investigating a disappearance anymore. You're performing an archaeological dig, hoping to find fragments of truth buried under decades of assumption. Every missing person deserves immediate attention. Not tomorrow. Not when you're sure. Now. Detective Sullivan discovered the truth through what Vicky hadn't done. Social Security number? Inactive since February 1974. Driver's license? Never renewed. Bank accounts? Untouched. If Vicky started a new life, she did it without leaving a single official trace. That's not starting over. That's vanishing completely. In 2010, Sullivan entered Vicky's DNA profile into NAMUS, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System. Any unidentified remains found anywhere in America get checked against her profile. So far, no matches. She's been ruled out as the Lady in the Dunes and 12 other unidentified victims. Dr. Barker, now in his 80s, maintains his innocence. Without a body, without evidence, without witnesses, prosecutors have nothing. He's never been charged, probably never will be. But here's what keeps this case alive. Someone else might have known about that Colorado trip. A friend Vicky confided in, a colleague who overheard something, a hotel worker who remembered an unusual couple. Share this video. Someone in your life might hold a piece of this puzzle without realizing it. 50 years is a long time to carry a secret. Maybe it's time to let it go. The West Point Enigma. January 7, 1950, United States Military Academy, West Point. Cadet Richard Cox received a phone call. The man identified himself only as George, claimed they'd served together in Germany. Cox agreed to meet him. He returned to his barracks drunk, unusual for Cox. His roommates found him agitated, pacing, talking about this visitor. George had bragged about killing Germans during the war, not in combat, murders. He'd described enjoying it, wanting to do it again. "This guy's dangerous," Cox told his roommate. "Really dangerous." Yet the next day, Cox met George again, spent hours with him, came back sober but troubled, wouldn't explain why he kept meeting someone who frightened him. January 14th, 1 week later, Cox attended a basketball game, then signed out at 4:45 p.m., told his roommates he was having dinner with a friend, full dress, gray uniform, left his money, his watch, his civilian clothes. A witness saw him meet someone near Grant Hall. The description matched what Cox had said about George: rough-looking, older, wearing civilian clothes. Cox never made the 11 p.m. bed check, never made any check again. The only West Point cadet to vanish without explanation in the Academy's 225-year history. 75 years, 3 theories, 0 proof. Theory 1, CIA recruitment. Cox had studied Russian at West Point, served in military intelligence in Germany. The CIA, formed just 3 years earlier, needed Russian speakers for Cold War operations. Did they fake his disappearance to send him behind the Iron Curtain? A former CIA deputy director later hinted Cox had undertaken dangerous missions, but hints aren't evidence. Theory 2, personal escape, 1950. America didn't accept alternative lifestyles. The military discharged thousands during the Lavender Scare. Did Cox flee to avoid exposure? His roommates mentioned he'd been receiving strange letters, seemed anxious about something beyond George, but investigators found nothing concrete about any secret life. Theory 3, murder. George killed him, disposed of the body somewhere in the Hudson Valley's 16,000 acres. But why? What connected them in Germany? Why would Cox keep meeting someone he feared? The FBI investigated for years. Their file on Cox runs hundreds of pages, most redacted with thick black bars. Freedom of Information Act requests reveal pages of nothing but black ink. What requires that level of secrecy 75 years later? What can't they tell us about a missing cadet from 1950? For 71 years, Ursula Unner Wagner kept her mouth shut. She'd grown up with Cox in Mansfield, Ohio, knew his walk, distinctive, unmistakable. 1 week after he vanished from West Point, she saw him walking along railroad tracks in Mansfield. Their eyes met. She raised her hand to wave. A train passed between them. When it cleared, he was gone. Why didn't she report it? "I thought he was involved in government work," she told a historian in 2020, shortly before her death. "Secret work. If I said something, I might get him killed, or myself." This was 1950. The Rosenbergs would be executed for espionage 3 years later. Senator McCarthy was destroying lives with accusations. The wrong word to the wrong person could end everything. So Unter Wagner stayed quiet, married, raised children, carried this secret through the entire Cold War. Only when she knew death was approaching did she finally speak. Her sighting suggests Cox made it home, briefly, that his disappearance was planned, that George might have been a handler, not a threat. But if Cox was recruited for intelligence work, his mission either went wrong or went so right that he could never come back. 3 cases, 3 decades apart. But look closer. They're teaching us the same brutal lessons. Immediate action changes everything. Amber Hagerman's case got instant attention, 7,000 leads, DNA evidence preserved. Still unsolved but workable. VICKE Lamberton, 36 years of silence destroyed any chance at physical evidence. Richard Cox, the delay in understanding what happened let crucial witnesses scatter to history. Technology keeps these cases breathing. Amber's DNA waits for genetic genealogy to advance one more step. Vicky's profile sits in Namus, comparing against every unidentified body found. Cox's case might crack if classified documents ever see daylight. Every year brings new tools, new databases, new possibilities. But here's what technology can't replace: human memory. Someone remembers that black pickup truck. Someone knows why Dr. Barker really went to Colorado. Someone met George and knows his real name. You're not just watching true crime content. You're part of an active investigation network. That detail that seems insignificant, it might be everything. That old photograph in your attic could be evidence. That story your grandfather told about someone who disappeared, maybe it connects. These families don't get closure. They get birthdays with empty chairs, holidays wondering if this is the year. Amber's mother is still fighting. Vicky's siblings still searching. Cox's classmates still asking questions. Time doesn't heal these wounds. It just teaches families how to breathe around them. But one phone call, your phone call, could change everything. Remember that question from the beginning? What if the person who took your child was still out there, walking free for 29 years? They are. Amber's killer, Vicky's professor, Cox's George. They're out there, getting older, maybe getting careless, maybe getting tired of the secret. If you lived in Arlington in 1996, Worcester in 1974, or near West Point in 1950, think. That neighbor who moved suddenly, that relative who can't discuss certain years, that friend whose story never quite made sense. You don't need proof, you just need to call. Every detective we've discussed today is one phone call away from a breakthrough. Comment below. Which of these cases haunts you most? Which one makes you think, I might know something about this? Because discussions start conversations, and conversations trigger memories. Someone knows something, someone always does. After all these years, maybe that someone is finally ready to talk. Maybe that someone is watching right now.